Good day to you all. Welcome to Plow and Potato. I am Sean Bonet.
I'm Joffrey Swait.
We are here to bring you another fine, dazzling, outstanding, fantastic episode of Plow and Potato. And today, we're going to tackle the idea of holidays.
High Holy Days.
High Holy Days. And you have a poem memorized about High Holy Days, don't you? About Mary Sue or...
It just has that line in it. It's an old English ballad.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Oh, holiday, high holy day, the best day of the year. But actually, it's about adultery.
Well, I thought you were quoting one about Mary Sue right before the show started.
I don't remember that one. No.
You're like Mary Sue.
That was this one. I was chanting what I just sang now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, then you
He
put
spied
it
Lord Arlen's, blah, blah, blah.
Very nice. So, Christians are faced with holidays all the time. We're a pretty celebratory people. We've got some very dear holidays to us, but we're often in a place in life where we have to deal with other people's holidays that are distinctly not Christian or sort of made up by non-Christians. There's all these ways which people are trying to introduce the idea of holiday into our lives.
And beyond that, what do we? It's one thing if we're looking at, say, a Muslim holiday, and we're not Muslims. I think how a Christian handles that is pretty clear. Yeah. But then, how do Christians handle holidays that for many of us have just been absorbed into our lives, like Labor Day, or, as this episode is coming out, Martin Luther King Day.
Right.
Is that a holiday that should be celebrated by Christians? And I'm not talking about necessarily about the merits of a particular holiday. Mm-hmm. Right? There are people who object to MLK Day based on Martin Luther King's character. But we're talking actually about sort of a higher level of operating, where, should such a holiday even exist, even if MLK had been an upstanding character, should he have a day?
Right.
And should Christians celebrate it? Let's talk about it.
So that's what we're going to dive into. Before we get going, we want to tell you about an organization, a consortium, if you will, that'll help you have these thinky thoughts that we're about to have here. Here's our ad from Kepler Education.
Kepler is not a traditional online school. It is a consortium of independent online educators unified by a common vision to bring a Christian and classical education to junior high and high school students.
I always thought Scott looks really smart in that video.
They did a good job of that.
Look at me.
Scott's the guy with the big beard. Yeah,
I'm behind the camera and the microphone, and I'm intensely teaching kids about Plato and other Greekness. So we need to jump into this discussion by trying to sort out what are we even talking about when we say holiday. So what does the word holiday mean, Joffrey?
It's a holy day.
Oh, man of many languages.
Yeah, let me break it down as I access English. It's an obscure tongue.
Okay.
You may have heard of it. Those who study classics often study English. Uh-huh. And they've determined that holiday comes from holy day. And this is really where the rub is. I mean, obviously, words can change meaning, but, what's holy? Right. And what holy things should be a part of our lives? So there are all these holidays out there, right?
Yeah. It's funny that, well, before we just even dive into the many holidays that we can observe, you can take holy, which kind of at a basic definition means set apart, mm-hmm. and that just works well for the secularists, right? When they think about, we can call it holy day, holiday, because we're setting something apart, we're doing something different here. And you sort of take it far away from its initial religious perspective.
Set apart for something.
That's right. You take away the point B that then gives the fact that setting apart means something. So that's holy day, holiday. And you're right. There are so many holidays out there which we can observe. You and I were talking about how on a calendar, I still have a physical calendar, and I also use my digital calendar on my iPhone a lot. You've got these sort of googly holidays.
Right, the holidays you only see on your Google Calendar or maybe in some print,
That's right. Or that are talked about in kid shows that you watch, like Sesame Street was really big at doing things like this. So they would mention things like Chinese New Year. So that's specifically Chinese one, trying to celebrate the incoming of the spring, emphasizing luck, dressing yourself, feasting in such a way.
Holy has become a much bigger thing in the last 15 years.
Yeah, holidays, right?
Hey, yeah, no, that Indian holiday, where colors abound and you're throwing dye powder at people, and
Right.
looks like a lot of fun.
It looks like a fun run.
And people, you were saying that saying off mic that fun runs apparently are often organized around this, right? And hey, you know what? Who doesn't want to throw a bunch of colors at people and have them burst? And it looks like absolute fun, but it has nothing to do with me. And of course, from the perspective of here I am, I'm an American in front of my computer. Are there lots of Indians in this country? Yes, there are. But Google makes sure to, I'm sure that listeners have observed that there's often an agenda with these Google Doodles, No. And there's definitely a purpose to all of the things that they're promoting, including the holidays that they trot out in front of us as if we celebrated them, right? Because holidays shape our lives. In all of these episodes that we've done recently, talking about particular Christian holidays, we've noted how the calendar can shape our families. It's a big deal as Easter comes up, because Easter is important to us, right? And then you have companies like Google trying to act and having more and more success as time passes with making these things that have nothing to do with us or our history be ours, right? And we'll get into historical holidays and all that sort of thing later, but there's definitely like an agenda out there to undo who we are.
Yeah, and Google emphasizes diversity, globalization, etc. And Kwanzaa is such a great example of that, something made up, because it's specifically an African American holiday. Yeah. It's not an African holiday.
And it's an African American civil rights holiday, like made as a part of that. Like, so let's remake our identity. Let's definitely throw out Christ, because there was this fallacious idea out there that Christianity was not African, but Islam might be. Like, it was absolutely insane.
Yeah, and so you have this holiday that I would say most black people, I don't know if I can say this, most black people identify more with the American experience than the African experience.
Right, yeah.
And anytime they try to dig back into some sort of African heritage and roots, I just think it's really phony. There's something about it that is not legitimate heritage tracing. Yeah. Like, so much of their experience, even if you want to zero in on, African American things that sort of get developed in black communities, even that is just really distinctly American, and it would be as foreign to Africans in their country if you try to bring look, Afro stuff.
We celebrate, Well, the artificiality doesn't bother me as much as the agenda of it does, right? Because it was purposely made to unchristianize blacks, right? But we've talked about in previous episodes how sometimes we just have to start traditions on our own. Maybe we didn't grow up as Christians, right? And so we want our family to value Christmas. So let's invent the Christmas bunny. The artificiality part doesn't bother me, but it needs to be rooted in something legitimate, something real. That there's another black holiday that to me is actually pretty beautiful, and that's the holiday of Juneteenth. Right, and that celebrates liberation, an actual historical event for a particular people. And at some point, someone had to artificially say, right, let's do this thing. But they were grabbing hold of something real and of an energy that already existed, right, and then making something out of that.
And when you talk about the artificial creation, you're mostly saying it's man-made, not divinely given. Is that where you're going with that idea?
Well, so that would, I think, open up the question of historical holidays, and I mean, like, what about July 4th or Columbus Day? Right. These, I think, have a real place in our lives, because our being Christian, of course, is not just the most important thing, it's all of our being. Right. But as Christians, we are American or Canadian or French, and there are things that we celebrate about that. We might, if we were French, I think it would be pretty legitimate to celebrate that we're better at cheese. That'd be fine.
And wine, and let the Italians suck it.
Exactly.
So I mean, all these holidays, they come together and get formed because we're trying to commemorate something, and we're hoping that our culture and society would be identified by the principles behind that. You take, we were sort of, as we were listing those Google type holidays, they're kind of more secular in nature and a feel. But then we have more religious holidays, such as like Hanukkah and Christmas. And Day of the Dead, sort of, I think.
Yeah.
Would you put that in a religious holiday?
I would, absolutely.
Yeah.
But then, that has to do with the core identity. We are homo adorans more than anything else. So it's, it's one thing for a Mexican Presbyterian to celebrate Mexican Independence Day, which is not Cinco de Mayo, or but like he couldn't celebrate Day of the Dead.
Right.
Because, he has to actually look at it and say, well, it's connected to some form of Christianity. It's this warped kind of thing with the Roman Catholic Church. Right. So we're not going to do this, right? And that each family is responsible to make decisions like that. But yes, Day of the Dead is a religious holiday, but we can't put them all on the same platform, right? Like we have to be Christians about it, and we have to recognize that Christmas celebrates something bigger, something cosmic, something that has everything to do with all of reality, where, say, Ramadan is a demonic religion's holiday, right? And that doesn't mean we're rude to Muslims who celebrate Ramadan, but we also know that it's a lie.
Yeah.
Right. Just as what's in the Quran is a lie, and even holidays like Hanukkah. I mean, these are part of the Jewish religion now, right? And so we have our faith, our great faith, and it's going to introduce a liturgy to our yearly lives, and the things we incorporate into it should have to do with that, including something like July 4th. Is July 4th something that we'll unpack it at some point soon? Is July 4th a holiday Christians should celebrate? So we can celebrate holidays that aren't directly religious, but our lives should be liturgical, which means they take us somewhere. Where are these holidays taking us?
Yeah, and as liturgical people, that's our greatest challenge, because I've mentioned there's this spectrum of holidays where some are super religious and oriented to the spiritual realm, and others are just more general, boots on the ground, like Labor Day, for instance. And then other holidays that get charged with spiritual meaning, even though they're not explicitly like that. So I would take Martin Luther King Jr. Day for that. It's got a weird spiritual air to it, I think partly because of Dr. King's faith and his followers coming after him with that same sort of religious spiritual zeal. And then it gets bumped into like liberation theology ideas, and it becomes this black church holiday almost.
So I would reject Martin Luther King Day on the basis of just it being a secular holiday, and our family doesn't celebrate secular holidays, and we can unpack what that means. But you could also reject it for the same reasons that Mexican Christian I mentioned would reject the Day of the Dead, right? Is that it's falsely religious.
Yeah. So we've got all these holidays that we can examine and be aware of, but the real crux comes to like what should they mean for us? How should we think about them? We need to take that next step that you've been alluding to of diving into the civil versus the religious holidays and how we should privilege them. And I think the basis for that is taking off from your point about how our lives are structured liturgically, calendar-wise, is really important. So if you're a family and you do something to celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day, besides taking a day off that you're sort of required to, that says a lot about how your faith, the all-encompassing Christian life, is being manifested in your life.
Yeah, and holidays play a big role in how we and our families establish our identity.
Right.
And I think we see easily as Christians how being a family that celebrates Christmas, does that. But then, when we're talking about, we're using the expression civil holidays, but, Labor Day, what does that do? That privileges the description of you as a worker highly. Right, which so it's completely a state holiday, and in fact, it has communist origins, right? But most people don't think about that. But the fact that even if all you do is take the day off of work on that day, you're telling your family the fact that society, the fact that our government views me as a worker is acceptable to me.
Right.
I'm a cog in their machine, and I accept that, and in fact, I celebrate it. Right? And the kids see that. Something like July 4th is much more organic because if it's civil, it's civil in the sense of society. We are a people. We're the American people. An event happened. Right. So July 4th, Juneteenth, whatever. An event happened, and we celebrate that event because it made us a better people. What in Labor Day makes us a better people?
That's right. It's the idea of moving general to specific. So with Labor Day, it's just general thinking, thoughts, ideas versus here's a momentous time that we're going to set apart. It just goes back to proverbial ideas that we should have dear to us is like not moving ancient landmarks and having them in order to keep a sense of group identity and focus and purpose. And it's primarily how a group can take over and almost change the meaning of a holiday is why like I don't really give much credence to Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I think a lot of things going on in the civil rights movement, in principle, were good. The execution of them is more questionable. And even you think about how the figure of Martin Luther King Jr. was sort of angelicized, deified. It's like, well, that's really poor because he was good in a lot of ways and he was bad in a lot of ways. And yet, we're more okay with celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. Day, but like Columbus Day, that's up for grabs. Like it's a fight, and like it says something poorly about your character if you don't want to turn Columbus Day into Indigenous People Day.
Right.
And just taking all that together.
But it makes sense that there's an agenda with this because it's a recognition of the fact that holidays take you somewhere. And you described Labor Day as generic. If it is generic, it's in the sense that it's kind of meta. Right. So, Labor Day is a vague thing, but it's perfect for those with a certain agenda because, it makes it's part of what sets up the state as the definer of our reality, right? Sure, some of you celebrate Christmas and some of you don't, but Labor Day is real because you're all workers, right? That's the biggest reality that is brought by Labor Day,
right?
And so, the very genericness of it is what makes it dangerous. I'd love to talk about Thanksgiving, though. You mentioned we talked about Thanksgiving a little bit in the Thanksgiving episode. It came up in the Thanksgiving episode.
Well, here we are, last episode at the top of it. We made a point of not saying that we're a calendar podcast. And here we are talking about holidays.
Yeah, but not calendars necessarily. Right. We're talking about the principles behind, how your family conducts its life and what it chooses to celebrate. But Thanksgiving was not something I celebrated in great part because I didn't grow up with it.
Yeah.
But and I had this reaction against these civic type holidays, and it kind of struck me as that. The gratitude thing is obviously a big deal, but then, as I thought about it a little more, I celebrate Independence Day, like I'll barbecue at least, right? So then, why don't I celebrate some brothers in Christ having a great day, and in some sense, I descended from them, right? That's great. I should stop being such a grump about it, right? There's a story there, and I'm a part of that story in some way.
And it's amazing how we can get washed up in just the tradition of your house when you grow up.
Yeah.
Like, most of my experience and practicing of holidays is just based off what I received. I'm getting to the point where I'm having to make those distinctions for myself. I like the idea of Thanksgiving because I love colonization. I think colonization is great in so many ways.
So you don't celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day?
Heck no.
Now, I feel like that's something that when you mention, you're like,
Day.
Then, okay.
No, but because it's not that I hate Indigenous people, but they're being utilized.
It's an agenda.
It's an agenda. They're being utilized against their will. And I mean,
not always against their will. A lot of Indigenous peoples have jumped on board with that.
Oh, sure. That's right. But it's even like the wicked ways in which politics gets involved with holidays. We talk about that. We don't like when politics and science play together. I don't like when politics and holidays play together because whether it be something for Martin Luther King Jr. Day or Indigenous People Day, you have woke mobs and intersectionality groups coming in to like almost pull some momentum from something that's not even theirs, because it's really a lot of the time just a bunch of, I don't know.
But did you ever feel like Columbus Day was yours?
Like as like I identify with Columbus?
Well, or like it's my people celebrate this. Columbus Day is an afterthought in my experience everywhere except the Northeast. Like there it's a big deal.
Yeah, because it's like their land.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, they're more into like because Columbus it was way down in the Caribbean, but like there's this more of this idea of like just settling.
He landed here.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
There's a lot of colonial stuff.
Yeah, and it's amazing how the culture in the United States can vary by region in terms of what kind of holidays they would emphasize.
And that kind of thing is organic and natural. But you know, the thing with Indigenous Peoples Day for you, that's a reaction against the state and its puppets, right? They're
right.
trying to destroy an identity and make everyone conform to a new one, where everyone says, yes, in fact, all of these people were horrible. It's better to be this way. Everyone kowtow to it. And that really emphasizes to us the importance of having our own identity as a people and our own holidays. And that's what we rest in. It really doesn't matter or shouldn't matter if Columbus Day is celebrated because Christmas is.
That's right.
Right? And there are some things like, hey, Americans should fight for July 4th to be preserved if it ever comes under attack, right?
Yeah.
But none of it is core. Like the United States itself could collapse and the church would still be here. And we should remember that when our families celebrate things. If July 4th is, and I don't think it is for many people, so I can mention this safely, but if July 4th is the peak of your yearly calendar for your family, if these here United States fall apart, then there's a true identity in crisis. Like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
But Christmas will never end. Easter will never end.
That's right. And if that's not in place, you see those sort of government puppets, agendas being successful, because we can take holidays and understand them as a time for for you to be off work, to cease your daily activities and get trained up and get taught. Like the reason I have such a hard time with the idea of Indigenous People Day is because I receive emails, from various institutions and places about like, oh, for Indigenous people, we have this speaker lineup, and it's hardly has to do with anything Indigenous wise, but like why we should all be woke and why we should be communists.
Exactly.
And so
really, like, why should Indigenous Peoples Day be a big thing for you?
Right.
It's already, they have to create that.
That's right. And that's how you get crafted in, is one, they're trying to re-educate you, and part of that means you have to be a part of the solution.
Right.
And we love that language, except you have to be a part of the solution by coming under our agenda and identity, and all of a sudden you're lost.
Yes. Education, and then what you just said, re-education, I think is a key part of what we're talking about here, right? Because we want to be a practical podcast for families, Christian men and women thinking about how they're leading their lives and leading their families. And so, holidays educate. They do. And holidays can re-educate, right? It is part of a re-education program to institute certain holidays, and it started with Labor Day, right? Labor Day is May Day in a lot of countries. It's a celebration of the communist revolution, right? It's openly communist in other countries. Who brought it here? Communists,
with a capital C.
With a capital C.
And that rhymes with T, and that stands for pool or trouble. Dang it.
So one thing we have not brought up yet are Hallmark holidays.
Oh, yeah. I love Lifetime. It always makes me feel better about the world, and just knowing that soccer moms will never cease till the day that Jesus
They'll always
returns.
find their buff, handsome. They always own a cookie shop.
Well, and they're always divorced.
Yes, but they still manage to find their handsome Adonis.
Yeah.
But okay, so there are fluffy Hallmark holidays, but then there are holidays that everyone celebrates, like Mother's Day or Father's Day.
And then, what do you do when you're in a church and they celebrate it.
Oh yeah, no, well, or July the 4th even.
Yeah.
Like this is the highest reality, and you put up a flag and you called up all the cops to thank them for their work, and you know,
pray over them.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, this has become a civil religion holiday, and you brought it into the Sunday when all of God's people are together. Kind of incidentally, all the Christians in China are in the heavenly throne room with you right now. Like, isn't this distracting?
Right.
Should we be doing this?
Well, there's a way in which the church, if you will, can celebrate something like 4th of July, but not in the public worship.
Right, exactly.
Public worship. And that's why I take issue if you have this, you know, something like Mother's Day and Father's Day is a lot more tame than 4th of July, because mothers and fathers are universal, whether they be Chinese or Japanese.
Yes,
or
and it's not in the worship. If it's in the worship service, that's something else. I mean, that's a whole other ballgame. But I don't celebrate Mother's Day, and this has caused strife in my marriage. Here's looking at you, Kimberly.
Because she's a mom.
Well, yeah, and she grew up.
Oh, is this another patriarchy thing?
Well, I don't celebrate Father's Day either, but sure.
Okay, good.
It's just a God thing, dude. Relax.
Ooh, all right, I'll relax. I'll put my feathers down.
I say that knowing that you probably celebrate Mother's Day, but yeah, so.
Actually, they're just also inconveniently timed, you know? Like, who has time to go see? Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Well, this is your perfect excuse, because now you can go to Rachel and say, I have principles about Mother's Day. It's not about a convenience. It's that I can't because God would be displeased.
Now that's very spiritual.
Play that card.
If God would be displeased, you can do anything you want.
So here's the real truth. After years of back and forth, there is some small acknowledgement. Happy Mother's Day and maybe a breakfast.
Maybe a kiss on the cheek.
But I refuse to have Father's Day celebrated. Maybe a kiss on the cheek. Yes. The thing is, she's always getting kissed.
Oh, your wife?
Yes, my wife. By me. So, I mean, you know, what's happening? What do you mean? Stop talking, dude. I really sense some bad places. Yeah, all right. But it was actually traumatic for my wife to handle the idea that Mother's Day wouldn't be celebrated.
Traumatic?
I'd go so far as to say that, yeah.
Traumatic.
When Kimberly watches this, she can chew me out and chew you out for letting me say all these things. But it's not just about the legitimacy of a holiday. I mean, Mother's Day was invented. Like, one particular woman harassed her congressman until, and he said no several times, until he finally agreed to bring it up. And I believe it was rejected initially, but eventually enough moms got behind this that it was part of the suffragette movement and the women's liberation, women's rights, voting rights, and suffragism, part of all of that. And I'm not interested in the direction that goes.
Yeah, but that's
I have
biblical.
better holidays to celebrate.
That's so biblical. That's just the parable
What's biblical?
of what that woman did. You should love.
Yes, that's
the
right.
biblical
She
action
knocked,
of that.
and she knocked until the ruler
persistent
finally
widow.
said, exactly.
Okay, here's your Mother's Day. Take it with Bunny and
Oh
Easter.
man, I think she might actually have been a widow. Goodness, but you know, so and then Mother's Day was instituted by decree, like a lot of holidays that we aren't even aware of, right? Like there's.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I invite you all to go Google holidays. And you'll have the Google holidays, but you see a calendar, you're like, wow, there's something to do every single day.
But then businesses latch onto those things, and so that, of course, Mother's Day becomes a thing because there's potential to sell. It was not for years later that someone finally decided to say, okay, Father's Day could work out nicely too. Because Mother's Day obviously is going to be a much more profitable
Milwaukee
thing.
and Craftsman were like, ooh, we could
Yeah, exactly. But
discount tools.
You know, like where are these holidays taking me? It is innocuous, completely innocuous, to give my wife flowers and chocolate and make her breakfast in bed.
Yeah, who wants to do that for their wives?
No, it's harmless. It really is. Like it's fine to do, but I'm specifically not going to do that on Mother's Day because I don't celebrate the holidays that take my family somewhere crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I celebrate the holidays that take me toward Jesus, take them toward Jesus. And that includes July 4th,
That's
honestly.
Right. And I think that's bringing our point to the home base, the closing point, that it's good to resist certain holidays, even if the things that you would do on them can be justified within the Christian experience.
Right.
It's good to celebrate the moms. That's what we're told in Proverbs. That's like so much of what the Old Testament is based on, honoring parents in that regard. But it's almost strategic to be like, whoa, wait, what day is it? Mother's Day, May what? just know, everybody, we're not enslaved, and it shouldn't come off that stilted and awkward. But you've already had this conversation with your children that, oh, it happens to be Mother's Day. That's fine too. We can still make breakfast for mom. Right.
And I think there's variation in how you respond to it. I think it's very. I see it all the time. Christians who seamlessly absorb it into their lives.
Yeah.
But I think our tendency should be to want higher holidays. By the way, I think I might have left it unclear. I do celebrate July the 4th because I'm American.
Oh, you're American?
Yep.
Like, you have a passport?
Yes, and everything.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Joffrey can vote. Did you vote in the last election?
No.
Oh. So this brings us to, I think, some really good closing words and practical thoughts. Specifically, people need to know, what is the plow and potato calendar hierarchy? What should we be celebrating, and at what order? What needs to be the biggest, and how do we trickle it down?
All right. So do you have something you want to throw out there, or you want me to take it?
I'm going to throw up first Easter, right?
Yeah.
That should be celebrated in your life, and that should be the number one holiday. You should do things in a way that makes every other month and day revolve around that. And that's going to be specifically hard because you don't get 4 weeks off from it. You know, like if you're a student, or even in corporations, they extend these nice week 2 week breaks. And my wife and right now are scheming, how can we make Easter a bigger deal? How can we?
And I've talked to so many families who have done that, and and we've done that too. But I do want to kind of make the comment that community is such a big part of making that happen. Go to church on Easter, but not just Easter. Is there Maundy Thursday? No, but there's the church has stuff. Even like Presbyterian churches that don't observe the church calendar in any way, for some reason, will have a Maundy Thursday service. If your church has that, show up there, right? And have way more candy than anyone else for Easter. Buy bicycles for Easter, whatever, all that's great. But also participate with the people of God in celebrating it. Doing these things in community really helps to elevate it, because your kids notice, oh, we're taking time, and there's a rhythm to this time. This is a part of our lives.
Yep. And I think that's how you up Easter, is not only are you getting together like you do in other holidays, but giving gifts. We mentioned early on in the show, like one of the main ways that we celebrate a holiday is we fellowship with friends and family. There's presents, there's decorations, and there's feasting. Well, that needs to be happening with Easter. So right now, as you have time, start saving and start asking, well, what do you want for Easter?
Yeah,
what do you mean? What do I want for Easter? How
crazy is that?
Yeah, that's right. And
exactly.
what my family is doing is we're teaming up with another family, this idea of community, and like, how can we put our resources together and have big Easter feasts? But not only on Easter, but on the other, holy days that preceded, on Saturday, on Friday, and Thursday. And I think calendar speaking, tradition speaking, festivities go all the way like to Wednesday, right? Is that when they begin? Or is there something?
Well, there's Ash Wednesday, yeah.
That's right. So you can find a way to maybe, because you don't have time off from work and school, maybe it's like feast every night. Right. So it's like these consecutive days of feasting, which would
and Palm Sunday, the Sunday before. So you can do all these things with people. There are holidays of a lower order. And if we imagine how we celebrate them, let's go with July 4th. Okay, it's not the Church of Jesus Christ, so it's less of a big deal. But it's still a big deal to be American, and the story of being American. We're going to celebrate July 4th. Are you just going to stay home and not work and watch TV? Because that's lame.
That's
right? Of course not. You're going to have a barbecue with other people.
Yep.
Holidays ought to be all about other people.
That's right.
And that's actually another indication of a lot of these fake holidays. When Labor Day rolls around, it's just another day off of work. Some people barbecue, some don't. But everyone does something for Christmas.
That's right. So bringing that hierarchy, I think there'd be Easter. Christmas would come next. I like Thanksgiving, and I love 4th of July. And those are kind of the main four now that I think about it. My holidays that I like to do something for. Do you have anything to?
I'm a little more church calendary. I kind of start. I like
I do
the
like
cycle.
Epiphany and Advent too.
Sure, yeah. But I like to be obnoxious and say Happy New Year to people at Advent.
Okay.
And so then with the cycle starting there, it's kind of but we don't observe a bunch of the lesser days. For us, it's just about those big Sundays and then Easter and all the lead up to Easter. But that's enough of a rhythm and enough of a story. And then Thanksgiving gets incorporated into our family, into that story, with the flavor of Christian we are. We are American Christians.
Yeah.
And so there's this great thing that American Christians do. They thank God for a particular event and eat turkey. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love being American. So what this all comes down to is that you need to be thinking about what you do or don't do. That's just the classic ideas have consequences. Everything you're doing is bringing you closer to one God or another, this Father or that Father. And the more that you can make a list, like as a family, what do we celebrate? Instead of, just kind of be coming around to like, oh no, today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. What do we think about? Like, are we going to do anything? But if you set the tone in your family to have this holiday conversation, then if it's Mother's Day, or if it's July 4th, or Juneteenth, or Holi, or Kwanzaa, you're already prepared as a family to say, these are the holidays we celebrate, and this is why. These are the holidays that we don't celebrate, and we don't have an issue with them particularly, and these are the holidays we resist.
Exactly right.
And we don't want anything to do with it, whether because they worship demons or because they've been so, what's that word? Not catapulted, but just decimated. They're just ruins.
Yeah.
And it's just like almost to engage, like there's no fruitfulness to try to redeem maybe the good aspects of it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I'll put Columbus Day maybe in that number. People ruined it, and that's fine. Like, it's not a big deal to us and our identity. I would kind of end it, kind of follow up with that with, I would have an ending charge, a specific 2-level charge. Okay. The first would be, stop celebrating Labor Day. That can be the first one.
Joffrey hates Labor Day.
All Plow and Potato listeners, stop celebrating Labor Day. And then the higher level one.
Oh, I thought
this is the one for elite level Plow and Potato listeners.
Ooh.
Because it could call for sacrifice.
Oh.
Stop celebrating Father's and Mother's Day, and then tell us how that went down when you talked with your spouse.
but make sure you don't talk to your spouse until the very last minute. Make it be like the eve of Mother's Day. And be like,
I didn't forget.
Oh, and man, how could we forget Valentine's Day?
Oh, that's a whole other thing.
I guess you'll have to stay tuned this next month to see how Joffrey and I speak the language of love.
Oh man, that's coming up.
That's coming up. You know what I mean? A little bit of this. Thank you guys so much for tuning in with us. We hope you guys are very blessed. And go let your name say it all this week.